Hello, everyone. Welcome to the MeanGene Show here on iHeartRadio, getting you ready for the NFL playoffs, which will start, by the way, second weekend in January. Now, we still have 1 week of regular season football left, week 17, which will take place this weekend. I will not be doing my picks for those games because we just have a lot of unnecessary or games that just are totally irrelevant. What we will be talking about on this particular podcast is the teams that are going to make the playoffs, the teams that are in the playoffs, where they stand right now as far as seedings. And I quickly want to go over the teams that have been eliminated because the last thing I want you doing this weekend is rooting for teams that have no chance of making the playoffs. So quickly, let's look at the teams that have been eliminated. The teams that have been eliminated are, and this is the draft order, by the way, too. The number one team that has been eliminated didn't have the number one draft pick. Jacksonville Jaguars with a record of 1-14, not in the playoffs. New York Jets 2-13, not in the playoffs. Atlanta Falcons 4-11. They have your number 3 pick in the NFL draft. The Houston Texans 4-11. They are your 4th team there with the 4th pick. Philadelphia Eagles. What a year. What a year. The Eagles struggled. I mean, that 4-10-1 just wasn't good enough by the time they decided to bring in Jalen Hurts. It probably was a little bit too late. They really grappled with that decision. So it's going to be interesting to see what the Eagles do in the draft because they have a very high pick. Maybe they trade it. Who knows? I mean, that's some time away. The Cincinnati Bengals 4-10-1 as well. They have the 6th pick. The Carolina Panthers 5-10. They finished 5-10, 7th pick eliminated. Denver Broncos with the 8th pick, 5-10 eliminated. Detroit Lions, interesting season. Fired Matt Patricia and the GM, so now they are looking for new leadership. 5-10 did not make the playoffs. They have the 9th pick in the draft. The Los Angeles Chargers 6-9. Interesting year for Justin Herbert, and we can only. Well, I mean, time will tell if they keep Anthony Lynn. All indications are that they will fire Anthony Lynn and move into a different direction. So interesting. I guess if you're going to do it, you got to do it now where Herbert is a rookie because at some point in time, he's going to need stability as far as his coaching staff if he's going to be a successful quarterback in the NFL. So if you're going to keep Lynn, you're going to keep Lynn. If you're going to fire him, you're going to fire him. But this is really critical as far as the development of Justin Herbert and how he will come back in his second season next year. The San Francisco 49ers, 6-9. They have the 11th pick in the draft. Interesting team there. I mean, even, with the coach, Coach Shanahan, you just had more expectations out of the 49ers. I know they had injuries that kind of, hampered them a little bit, but to go from, being in the Super Bowl to almost winning the Super Bowl with a Jimmy Garoppolo and that talented young team that they had to not even making the playoffs. And I know this was one crazy year, folks, 2020 with coronavirus and the whole 9 yards and teams being impacted by that. I think everyone was on a level playing field as far as, positive and negative tests and this, that, and the other. And, you can question the NFL's decision and how they handled some of the COVID-related games, especially the 49ers having to play that Green Bay Packer team with, I think they had like 9 or 10 players out. So anyway, 49ers just got, you got to play with what you got, right? That's where you have, 53 men on the roster, and next man up is the motto. So you got to live with that. The Minnesota Vikings 6-9. They will have the 12th pick in the draft. Interesting there what's going to happen because will they hold on to Zimmer as they coach? Kirk Cousins, a lot of interesting pieces there in deciding which way management will go with the Minnesota Vikings. At times they look really good, and the NFC North was very competitive this year. So going to be interesting to see where they go. They have the 12th pick, the New England Patriots, not a name that you hear in the conversations of have been eliminated from the playoffs. They have the 13th pick in the upcoming draft. They are not going to be in the playoffs. And we wasn't sure what was going to happen with New England. We, debated on, okay, now we're really going to see if it was Belichick or if it was Tom Brady or if it was a system. So right now it looked like it was Tom Brady because Belichick's system has not been able to work with Cam Newton, and Cam Newton. Now, Belichick was smart, and New England was smart in not paying Cam Newton a lot of money. I was one. I remember saying on a podcast that, wow, a former MVP, you just for him to get $1 million. I mean, apparently they did their due diligence and didn't see what they wanted to see that would have warranted them giving Cam Newton more money. So Cam Newton now is hoping that he will have a chance to play next year for someone. I don't think it's going to be New England. And then again, it could be. Who knows? I mean, but I really doubt it. So, and then the 14th team that did not make the playoffs, and they will be selecting number 14 in the NFL draft, is the Las Vegas Raiders. Man, what a way to go out the way they did against the Miami Dolphins on Saturday. Incredible game. They could have won, and they could be in the playoffs. I mean, it was just crazy. They finished the season 7-8, and I mean, they could have, finished. They're 7-8 now. I mean, they still have one more game left, but they certainly could have been a 9-7 or a 8-8 team getting into the playoffs, but they did not make it. So those are your 14 teams that have been eliminated from the upcoming NFL playoffs. Now we'll take a look at the playoff picture here. So now there will be some teams there are 7 teams that will make the playoffs from the AFC, 7 teams from the NFC, 3 extra teams. You get your 4 division winners and 3 wild cards. And over in the NFC right now, your number 1 seed, Green Bay Packers. I don't believe they have clinched throughout yet. Green Bay Packers is your number 1 seed. The Saints are your number 2 seed. The Seahawks, they clinched the division. So did the Saints. The Saints clinched the division, the NFC South. The Packers clinched the NFC North. The Seahawks clinched the NFC West. And the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they also clinched a playoff spot. They are your 5th seed, and I don't think that's going to change. I don't think it's going to change now. I didn't say, I'm getting ready to say it, the NFC East, because that right there is an interesting situation there. Right now, it is the Washington football team. They are your 4 seed. Now, that could change. They have a date with the Eagles coming up to end the season. We don't know what's going to happen. Only one team from the NFC East is going to make the playoffs. So it could be the Giants. It could be the Dallas Cowboys. It could be the Washington football team. We don't know. It won't be the Eagles because they are eliminated. But so we're going to wait and see. The Rams will be your 6th seed there. They've dropped a little bit. They got a date with the Cardinals, so that's going to be interesting Sunday to see what happens there. But as of right now, today, December 31st, 2020, the Rams are your 6th seed. And the Chicago Bears, wow, they are your 7th seed. And we saw it coming. We saw the Arizona Cardinals and how things, took place with them. They're on that bubble there, outside looking in. But the Chicago Bears, and you would have to say it's due to Mitchell Trubisky. So maybe Matt Nagy saves his job. Who knows? There's a chance that he might salvage the season, get into the playoffs and make things interesting, in the NFC. But right now, Bears fans, you should be happy. Your Bears are the 7th seed there. They're holding on to that last seed. So we'll see how things, would turn out. And the only reason why the Week 17, I'm not going to pick the games for Week 17. I'm going to watch them, though, because they're going to be interesting. And this is where teams like to play spoilers. There's already a lot of talk that the Eagles might lay down, and so that the Redskins, I knew I was going to say it, the Washington football team would get in the playoffs. Because that NFC East is all of those teams they hate each other for the most part, but I think the Cowboys are the most hated. And I can see the Philadelphia Eagles laying down and Washington win, and the Dallas Cowboys don't make the playoffs. So it's going to be interesting to see how that goes. Now, let's go over to the AFC. The number 1 seed there in the AFC is the Kansas City Chiefs. They have clinched home field advantage throughout the playoffs. So they only have to leave Kansas City to go to the Super Bowl, which would be in Tampa, Florida. So every game, unless someone goes there and pulls off a major upset. The Buffalo Bills are your number 2 seed right now. They are your number 2 seed. Now they are going to play they're going, and every game I believe for Week 17 is a division game. So that's what I guess that's the only thing the NFL said. You know what? There were always a lot of meaningless games in Week 7. Last week of the season, but they scheduled division games, so that makes it a little bit interesting because teams that need a favor to get into the playoffs, well, you got to go up against your division. So not so easy. Not It's just not so easy. I mean, like the Packers, they play the Bears, this weekend. Saints play the Panthers. Seahawks play the 49ers. Buccaneers play the Falcons. So even though some of these teams have been eliminated, they're still going to come out and play some pretty good football because they don't have nothing to lose in these type of games. And they know you do if you're, in the hunt or on the bubble or trying to jockey for playoff positioning. So Chiefs, no worries though. They locked it down. They're the only one that have locked down that number 1 seed. They get a first round bye in the AFC. Buffalo Bills, they play the Dolphins. Not necessarily an easy game for Buffalo. Now it might get down to teams resting certain players. I don't know what Buffalo is going to do. I mean, right now they got the number 2 seed, lose to Buffalo, and the Pittsburgh Steelers win over Cleveland. There could be some changing and positioning there in the seeding. But right now, it's going to be interesting to see what Miami has typically played spoiler over in that AFC East over the last couple of years. I think they had beat the Patriots, which gave Kansas City that higher seed, which led to the Chiefs, getting to the playoffs and winning the Super Bowl. So that's why it really does kind of come down to the last game of the season, even though it's not as competitive, but it's certainly worth watching. The Pittsburgh Steelers have the number 3 seed. They will play the Cleveland Browns. Browns still trying to make some noise, make things happen. They could possibly be one of those 11-5 teams that don't make the playoffs in the AFC conference. I mean, because you just got so many competitive teams with winning records there in the AFC. You can only get 7 in. Your division winners are locked down, so everybody's trying to get a wild card there. So the Steelers with your number 3 seed, the number 4 seed right now, and this could change, is the Tennessee Titans. The Titans are your number 4 seed, but they are sort of still in the hunt because a lot of things will depend on what happens with Miami and Baltimore and Cleveland. So the Indianapolis Colts could still sneak in there, and they're outside looking in right now. They could still get in there. They play the Jaguars, so Tennessee plays Houston, and that's a team that really don't have anything to lose. And the way J.J. Watt kind of ripped into his team as far as being competitive and being ready to play, who knows? The Titans might take one on the chin. And Indy will certainly be, watching that game to see what's going to be happening there. So that's what's happening there. Now your 5, 6, and 7 seeds, Miami, they are there. I mean, they are, sort of in the hunt there. Things could still sort of change there with Miami. They currently hold the 5th seed. The Baltimore Ravens have the 7th seed, and the Cleveland Browns have this. No, the Baltimore Ravens have the 6th seed. The Cleveland Browns have the 7th seed. So it's Miami 5, Baltimore 6, Cleveland 7. So all of the games that have major impact are going to be over in the AFC this weekend. So that's why we can't really give you a final playoff picture because we don't know what it's going to look like just yet. I mean, there's just, we don't know. I do want to talk about the Cleveland Browns and the Pittsburgh Steelers because Pittsburgh, coming off a win last week against Indianapolis, really put the Indianapolis team in a bad position there. Indy really needed that win. So Mike Tomlin has decided to bench. At first he said Ben Roethlisberger, but as of today, there are several other players, key players that may not start. So Mason Rudolph get the start against the Cleveland Browns. So this is going to be interesting because this is a serious and very, very meaningful game for the Cleveland Browns. Not so much for Pittsburgh because they've already clinched a playoff spot and it won't really matter as far as, they'll be a 2 seed or 3 seed. No one has a bye except Kansas City. So everyone's playing in wild card weekend in the AFC except, Kansas City. But to put Mason Rudolph in that starting position against the team that he has some negative history with the Cleveland Browns, this is going to be interesting. So, I mean, now Mason Rudolph could play spoiler himself. He could seek revenge on Cleveland and just go out there and have a masterful day. Okay. But at the same time, he could really stink it up to where who knows if he would even be on the roster next year because, Big Ben changes his mind. If he has a good game, he's like, yeah, I'll play in 2021. If he has a bad game, he's like, oh, man, I don't know. Maybe I should step down if I can't help my team. So, but regardless of what Big Ben does, Mason Rudolph is not the answer unless we see it on Sunday. Now, what's the old saying, you just don't really get a second chance to make a good first impression. In Mason Rudolph's case, he's getting a second chance. So let's just see. I mean, I don't think, Mason should look at this game as, hey, I'm just filling in for Ben, so he don't get hurt. And, my team, I don't want them to get banged up because we're going into the playoffs. Who knows who we're going to have to play? Probably the Ravens in the first round. But if I'm Mason Rudolph, knowing the history and what happened against Cleveland and the way he got, beat with that helmet last year, I would go out there and try to torch Cleveland up. I mean, I would. And man, it could do so much to this guy's confidence. But, the Browns are pissed. They're going to play pissed because they know the Steelers beat them early in the year. I was at that game in Pittsburgh. Steelers kind of beat them, convincingly, and I think put not Mason Rudolph, put Baker Mayfield out the game, if I can recall. But this is going. I mean, the Browns are going to be ready to play, and they know that they want to win that game. So that is the AFC and NFC playoff picture, folks. I will be back next week. I will have a special guest actually that's going to come and join me for the playoffs, the wild card weekend. So I'm looking forward to it. And a good friend of mine, so he's gonna really knows his football, by the way. And we agreed that he could come on here and talk some playoffs. I mean, he gets a little bit more in depth with this stuff than I do. But and I host the show. But I mean, there are some very knowledgeable folks out there that know their business. And I will introduce him next week, folks, when we get ready for our wild card weekend show. So that's what's happening. I hope everyone have a safe, happy New Year's Eve tonight. I know it should be safe because you can't go anywhere. I know folks will try. I think oh my goodness. I mean, just, having cabin fever this year is an understatement. People have been stuck in their homes and stuff. 2020 has been a crazy year. And I tell you, thoughts and prayers are with you for those of you who lost loved ones to COVID-19 and still losing loved ones to COVID-19. It's just not going to stop just because it's December 31st, 2020. It's going to continue on. But, man, it's just been a crazy, crazy year for sports, for the pandemic, just for everything. But I know many of us are just glad to be moving forward, turning another chapter. So NFL successfully was able to get through all 16 weeks of football. I mean, there was some shuffling. There was some Tuesday games, Wednesday games. There was some, crazy situations there throughout 2020, the season. But, man, I can't believe we actually got through it. I didn't see it. And I think some of the things that just really helped the NFL and the NBA in all the sports was just practicing the safety measures that were out there and doing what you were supposed to be doing to contain it. I mean, that was the only thing. It was a wish and a prayer basically for the season. I mean, who knew that they would get through it, but they didn't get through it just because they did it because people did what they were supposed to do, and their contact tracing was off the charts, and knowing what player was here and there and shouldn't have been, who they come in contact with. So, I mean, I gave props to the NBA, so I got to give props to the NFL, too, for being able to pull this off. So, a couple more weeks of football. It looks like, it's going to be a legitimate Super Bowl champion this year. I mean, all the teams that are there in the playoffs are the teams that would have been there, whether, fans were allowed or not. And, man, can't wait to see fans back in the stadium in 2021, hopefully. I think the NFL, because they don't start until next September, I think we might see, a lot of fans in the stadiums next year. So that'd be a wonderful thing. So anyway, folks, have a safe Happy New Year. Don't fire your gun in the air and do none of that crazy stuff that people do. Don't drink and drive. Don't do none of that crazy stuff that people do. So we want to see you in 2021. You got to be back next week because we're talking a wild card weekend for the NFL. And that's when things get really exciting, folks. I have to take it up another level when the playoffs start, all right? So anyway, Happy New Year. We'll see you next year here on the MeanGene Show right here on iHeartRadio.